Mrs. Christaki will now take the floor. She is a pediatrician and neonatal expert from Crete. She will touch upon premature babies and their calorie and other nutritional needs if they are under exclusive breastfeeding. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the organizing committee on the invitation to be with you today. I will try to be brief and say some clear-cut things about premature babies.
Πώς είναι το επόμενο? Όχι, από τα προχωράω. Ωραία. Αυτή την ιστορία τη βρήκα στο ίντερνετ. Ωραία.
This is a story I traced, I spotted on the internet. Dalia is a premature of 28 weeks and has been and started breastfeeding 4 weeks later. The mother said that she pumped and that she wanted to breastfeed, and breastfeeding helped her a lot because breastfeeding was the only way for her to bond with her child. We're going to talk about prematurity, the weight deficit, the nutrition of prematures, the nutrition guidelines from the WHO and the AAP, as well as food supplements and some general guidelines for prematures. Every year, 15 million children are born prematurely. The complication of premature labor is the main cause of death for children under 5 years worldwide. And some of such deaths could be preempted with cost-effective solutions. The frequency of premature labor differs rather causes for premature labor differ from country to country. We know what the definition of a premature infant is, so I won't dwell on that. Deficit of the low weight children below 2 kilos, below 1.5 kilos, and even lower, even less. 15.5% of births in the world are low-weight children. In Europe, 6.4% of births are premature babies or low-weight babies, whereas in Southeastern Asia, this percentage increases. Low-weight babies are babies with low weight.
Ενώ το χαμηλό βάρος γέννησης
Underweight babies, sorry about that. And regardless of the cause for such a problem, problems in the future may be quite significant. The World WHO says that Sub-Saharan Africa registers quite a high percentage of premature babies. And this is another map, indicating what I just said. Asia also faces that problem. We have 10 countries with premature labors. The causes of death, below 5 years of age. Premature babies, 44%. So this is quite a huge percentage, if I may say so. Now, premature babies are quite different. They are immature. They are non-mature, neurologically wise. With reference to their feeding patterns, we see that they can't swallow. They start sucking quite late. And when they are 33 to 34 weeks, they start synchronizing respiration, breastfeeding, swallowing, and then the premature is in the position to drink, to breastfeed and actually drink milk. Difficulties in feeding prematures have already been presented. We have issues of enzymes, immaturity of enzymes, and we have problems, rather issues in the gastrointestinal tract. It is immature, there is reduced mobility, there is a higher risk for reflux. Feeding premature babies also entails not real food, such as suckling the nipple with maybe little drops of milk. These are all processes that stimulate the mucus of the premature baby and help the baby shift to a proper feeding pattern. And this is something that needs to be encouraged. The sooner the better. The feeding processes in the several hospitals differ. We usually start with the gavage, and when the infant is more mature, then it may breastfeed directly or use a spoon or other processes. Now, the objective of feeding prematures, we want to allow them to follow the course they would follow in the uterus, to allow them to have a proper growth and development. And we also want to allow them to reach an appropriate weight. We also want to allow them to have the best neurological and nervous development. Now here we see how different the weight in children is. We see premature babies with 80% of water and less fat, less by 7.8% if compared to other babies, and their content in protein is also very low. And the weight gaining process is also very different in the different categories of premature babies, depending on the weeks. Now, estimating the increases takes place through the several measures that are available, both in the hospital and at home. The weight, of course, is the main indicator. The height is another indicator, important indicator, because it reflects the muscular mass, meaning that mass that is not fatty tissue. Then 1 centimeter per week, that's the increase in the first weeks, and then the head perimeter, which is also an important indicator, and we wish to achieve 1 centimeter per week. The Fenton curve of 2000 growth charts of 2013, and then the WHO charts. Here we have the Fenton charts. Fenton growth grids for both for girls and boys up to 50 weeks, meaning after 40 weeks of gestation, and also covering the phase of transition, meaning from the hospital to home. And then we have the WHO graphs or grids also covering older children. Now, what happens in the extra-uterus increase of premature babies? We see that the smaller premature babies are born to 26 or 28 weeks. They are low in this curve. They lie low in this curve, in this graph. Somewhere here, for example, so below the 10th position, up to 36 weeks, most of the premature babies. That applies to most of the premature babies. So delay in gaining weight is quite broad, quite general, and this delay is usually accompanied, unfortunately, by other growth and development issues, whereas a good growth level is usually accompanied by other benefits, insulin resistance and so on and so forth. 99% of premature babies below 1,000 grams manifests a very, very slow rhythm of increase of weight gaining, and 40% of these babies, unfortunately, do not catch up quickly. And this is what this graph is showing. The upper curve has to do with the head, the one in the middle, the weight, and the third one, the height. Here we see when the baby leaves the hospital, then 12 months and then 24 months, we see that the major problem is height, and they are late in catching up if compared to non-premature babies, whereas weight is normalized more easily, if I may say so. Then there are some correlations and interactions between feeding and inflammations during the first weeks that are very important for a neonate in the hospital. So when we have low protein intake and energy, or cases of other diseases, the inflammation may be present in the body, and it influences the broader situation. It affects the growth hormone, the IGF-1. So we have delays in gaining height, and we may have some cognitive development issues or other issues of nervous of development or growth of the nervous system. Can you all hear me? The lady is asking. Apparently, yes. So the WHO guidelines and the American Society of Pediatricians are quite common. All premature babies, low-weight babies, need breast milk because they need to improve their survival rate. Total mortality amounts to 18%. This is what the studies, the few studies show. Breast milk helps them avoid specific diseases. It also helps them avoid some other development issues, and the metabolic syndrome is also avoided. Metabolic syndrome when they are adults, in their adult life. This is a graph from Boy with the macronutritionals and the needs of prematures. They depend on the level of prematurity, on the weeks, that is the exact weeks. Calories and nutritional needs differ, and the guidelines differ. Espagan published new guidelines in 2009, which are not identical to the WHO guidelines. The most recent guidelines that I traced are these ones. We see that term babies have different needs if compared to low-weight babies or to premature babies. We see that clearly here. And when the child, as the child grows, we see that the needs decrease. Fat also differs. We see it increased in this specific group of babies. Now, what happens with the breast milk? Breast milk is multifaceted. It contains macronutrients. Depending on the period of breastfeeding, there is a lot of protein in it, especially in the first days. We see the numbers here, quite a big fluctuation depending on the mother. This protein falls gradually, and after the 10 or 12 weeks, it is halved. Fat increases with time, and the more the breastfeeding goes on, the higher the fat, the more the fat increases, and the same applies to energy. The breast milk becomes richer in energy with later in time. So when breast milk is not easily available or immediately available, what kind of milk should we give the children? The guidelines say that premature and low-weight babies, in case there is no breast milk, they should get what we call bank milk, pasteurized milk. Some elements are not present in that type of milk. However, if compared to formula milk, it is much better, and the results are much better. Bank milk is much better, is considered to be much better if compared to formula milk. We need, however, to follow specific measures and to resort to certified such banks. AAP and Espagan recommend fresh or pasteurized breast milk for children below 1,500 grams, and they say that it should be enriched with proteins, metals, and vitamins in order to guarantee the presence of the necessary nutrients. And why such need? Because the composition of breast milk varies according to the time of the day, the method of pumping, the method of breastfeeding. Bank breast milk comes from donors with mature babies. It is rich in nutrients, and we know that this is very, very important for the nervous system of the babies. The problems, what are the problems now if we use enhancers, if this is the appropriate term? There may be some side effects in because that may cause a series of inflammations. Some recent data about enhancers deriving from milk of human origin. There are three approaches to such enhancers. The first is the defined use, meaning that most enhancers take milk after 2 weeks of labor, of birth. an adapted administration on the basis of the needs of the specific baby, monitoring the biochemical indicators and urea, which is an important indicator for the protein needs of the baby, and use of these enhancers in order to increase the protein in milk, and then the targeted administration, which is applied when we have a delayed increase in the weight of a premature baby. Then the nutrients are analyzed, and the milk may be enhanced accordingly. The WHO guidelines, the ones of 2011, for very low weight babies who drink breast milk or bank milk, no enhancers from cow milk are necessary. But if we have premature babies who do not gain weight under certain circumstances, well, in such cases, enhancers are necessary. So who does not support enhancers for all cases? Enhancers does not improve anthropometric characteristics. It increases the weight and the height in the short run. And then we have to also take into account the cost, which is quite high, so we need to be more careful with this specific solution. Cochrane conducted a meta-analysis on enhancers, on breast milk enhancers, and the conclusions are the following. Enhancers lead to short-term increase of weight, height, and head perimeter. However, such short-term increases do not lead to long-term benefits, so researchers did not trace any negative consequences or any negative effects. So now, with reference to vitamin D, calcium and iron administration is concerned, the WHO guidelines say that vitamin D is important from 400 to 1,000 units. They should take calcium and iron supplements and phosphorus supplements as well. Vitamin A or zinc is not necessary in certain stages. Now, with reference to vitamin D for very low weight children who breastfeed or drink bank milk with enhancers, a biochemical analysis needs to take place for calcium and phosphorus and alkalic phosphatases.
If it is over 800, then we should have a CT scan. If they have a low phosphorus, then it needs an addition of and we also need vitamin D of 400 LU per day and maximum 100 units per day. Now, high risk for rhinitis are preterm infants of less than 27 weeks, less than 100 grams, who have a long-term use of steroids in the history, necrosis and enterocolitis, or they have problems in other additions. Now, moreover, more guidelines of WHO for preterm infants. Low-weight infants should be placed in the breast as rapidly as possible. When they need to be fed, in other manners against breast milk. Milk should be administered via cup or spoon, which do not affect the breastfeeding process. Now, they should be fed exclusive breast milk up to 6 months of age. Now, minimal feeding 10 ml per kilos per day, pumped human milk. It was also referred to the kangaroo mother care, in other words, the skin against skin touch, especially with countries of low support. This is very helpful, but even in contemporary countries, it helps the better temperature of the baby, it has a better production of milk, and also helps the better relationship between mother and child. Now, mothers who have been taught the way of pumping should be done. They should also have some protocols of administering human milk with better way, but there's no evidence talking about the routine or culture of bacteria for other types. Now, human milk or mother's milk is important for premature babies and for every possible, for every other infant. But of course, preterm infants have problems sometimes with production of milk production. So we need to support mothers and newborns after the exit from the hospital until the actual term. So as a conclusion, let me say that through the progress of survival of preterm infants, the objective for the nutrition support of baby has nothing to do anymore with survival, but with a greater neurological and developmental evolution of babies. Human milk should be supported. We do not have any guidelines related to the nutrition of infants after the exit of the hospital, and should be personalized. We should have a continuous monitoring of the development of babies through the different curbs. Over here we can see a mother who has a skin-to-skin via SNS. Thank you very much for your attention. To thank Ms. Christaki for her presentation. I wish to thank all of you, especially the organizing committee, Mr. Varakis, for this kind invitation, all of you who were here till that hour, and especially our newborns who are among our speakers and representatives. We are really out of time, so you can speak with our conference attendees during the lunch break and ask any questions they might have. Congratulations for this great event.